This is Alan Karpik. Wednesday night wrap, I guess you'd call this, as opposed to Sunday conversation. Brian Newbert, Tom Dienhart join me. Want to thank our sponsor, which you'll see on the screen here, and that, of course, is the Purdue Memorial Union. A new sponsor with us. He's actually been a long-time sponsor, but if you know anything about what's going on at Purdue University, you know that the union has been renovated. White Lodging has done a. I have not been in it yet. Looking forward to doing that next week, but they are now open, and they have the not only a renovated rooms, but new restaurants, et cetera. And we'll be getting more into that, but they are a new sponsor to us here at Gold and Black, and we're appreciative of Stephanie and the whole gang at with the Purdue Memorial Union and the Union Club Hotel. So, Tom, I guess the first comment today is when that schedule came up, I think we might have all had the same. We had kind of a little bit of hint last night that Purdue was going to have some challenges on the front of it. But what was your first impression when you saw the schedule come up about 9 o'clock this morning Eastern?
Yeah, I tell you what, like everybody, Alan and Brian, you look at those first three games, Ruth Garrett DiMaggio, right? A murderer's row for Purdue at Michigan to open the season. Iowa, Ohio State at home on the heels of that trip to Ann Arbor, guys. Purdue's going to jump right into the deep end, as they say. And today, when Jeff Brom met the media, of course, he didn't flinch, guys. We know he loves playing difficult schedules. Well, he's going to get his wish. We're going to find out before the first leaf has fallen off a tree how good this team is when you're going against three quality programs like that right out of the gate.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a yikes moment for me, but just to see Michigan on the front end, even if you're playing at the big house, it may only have 25,000 people if you're lucky. Brian, your thoughts when you saw it come up, and I thought you had an interesting comment about the physicality and the common denominator of those first three teams are really going to be a challenge for Jeff Brom and company.
Yeah, what kind of jumped out at me right away is this was a really disjointed off season, and you didn't have a full spring, you didn't have a full winter and summer conditioning program necessarily. And if you're watching Major League Baseball right now, I don't have any data to back this up, but I feel like there's a lot of sore shoulders and a lot of hamstrings and things like that. You just worry about early season injuries after things unfolded the way they have the last couple of months. And, Purdue starts off going to Michigan, then Iowa, then Ohio State. That's three of the most physical teams in the league. So you really worry about picking up those little nagging early injuries. You go to Illinois September 26th, you get your bye week, and then you go to Wisconsin. So, you have a chance to get well, and then you go to Madison. So the physicality early in the season, not that there's any such thing as an easy runway into the Big Ten season necessarily, but just the back-to-back physical challenges this team is going to face coming off a really non-traditional offseason really would seem to me like something that has to be considered a little bit of a concern. Obviously, the way Jeff Brom and them would look at it would be a hell of an opportunity, which is true. All the stuff Purdue's dealing with right now, everybody else is dealing with too. So kind of all bets are off, I guess you'd say. But that's kind of what jumped out to me when I first saw the schedule.
Tom, you long time Purdue history, and I'm going real deep here. 1943 is kind of a similar year. I'm not saying Purdue's going to go undefeated like the Boilermakers did that year with Tony Butkovich and Alex Agassi, et cetera. But one thing that's could be, and I thought Brom kind of hinted at that, is, it's a great challenge. You really don't know, though, in the way this crazy world is now, what team you're going to see when you play them. I mean, not only guys that may opt out, but also whether you have some quarantine guys. But that's those first three games really get your attention. I thought interesting also, the Big Ten obviously planned its bye weeks strategically so that Ohio State and Iowa have the same bye week, if I'm right, as Purdue does, so that there's a lot of flexibility built in. So the idea is really to get this schedule done before December 19th, if you really look at it, as far as deep as it goes. But what was your impression of the flexibility and the job that Kevin Warren and staff did to get this done?
Yeah, hats off to those guys. So many moving parts, guys. And scheduling flexibility is what we heard was something the Big Ten wanted way back in July, almost a month ago, when
Right.
they made this decision to dump non-conference games, to play Big Ten conference games only. They wanted schedule flexibility to be able to be nimble. So if teams couldn't play games, they could maybe have makeup dates and enough openings in their schedule where, again, like I said, they could find commonality and find empty open dates to play games that may have to get canceled if teams get quarantined for extended stretches. So, yeah, guys, each team has those 2 byes. Plus, in the back end of the schedule, there's 4 weeks as well that are available for makeup dates too. So September 5th, I think the Big Ten was smart by jumping right into this thing here. Conversely, the Pac-12, the SEC aren't going to start, I think, until September 26th, guys. And who's to say what the situation COVID-wise is going to look like then? But again, I think the Big Ten wanted to stay nimble from a flexibility standpoint, and they accomplished that with this schedule.
Yeah, you look at that, and yes, it's possible things could get delayed. And I know, Brian, you've been covering fall camps since the beginning of time, it seems. But it seems like only you start August 7th and you got a game September 5th. That's not enough time, but really it is. It's somewhat consistent with what it's been in the past. 4 weeks. Now I know the prep going in isn't quite the same, but you talk about that schedule and how much time are we going to see teams that are not fully prepared? I mean, just because of practice.
Yeah, of course.
I think we're going to see some of that.
Yeah, it's a pandemic. I mean, I don't think anybody is necessarily expecting, the most aesthetically pleasing football ever played here. And that's kind of the good news of all this is Purdue's problems are everyone's problems. I mean, no one has an advantage here. And the outcomes of these games this year could be just total luck. I mean, it could be whoever lost the fewest players this week to COVID is going to win, or whoever, I talked before about all the concerns about potential early season injuries. Well, that applies to everyone. And, who's going to lose the most high-end talent to opt-outs? That's the sort of thing that is going to guide the outcomes of the Big Ten season this year. So, I don't think anyone's going to be prepared for week 1, but I don't think anyone's going to be prepared for week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12 either, because this could be a complete train wreck for all we know. They're going to give it their best shot here, but they're at the mercy of a lot of external forces here.
Yeah, you go back, and again, I go back to that World War II example. Purdue was 1-8 in 1942. They get a whole new group of guys. I'm just saying, it could be the great. I think your point is very valid that the best teams with the best talent may have more guys opt out. And you have no clue of who is going to be healthy or going to be able to play, and that could change the whole dynamic of it. Tom, what do you make interesting? And again, it's probably an example of, hey, as Brian reminded us, we are in a pandemic here. Ohio State and Michigan on October the 24th, I believe. You have Penn State and Ohio State, I believe, in week 2. Is that right? Yeah, I believe that's correct. And I haven't put it all to memory. It's just interesting. Purdue, Indiana still at the end of the year. But a lot of those rivalry games, especially the Ohio State-Michigan game, get your attention. That will not be the last game of the year, at least as the schedule says right now.
Yeah, those were a couple interesting observations, Alan. And if you're looking for a team that I think everybody would agree came out smelling like a rose, it's Wisconsin. Their cross-division matchups are extremely favorable for the Badgers. They were already I think, the overwhelming favorite to win the Big Ten West. Should this team, hold together, they have a good chance to maybe run away with this thing. So they've got a very advantageous schedule. Rutgers and Maryland and Indiana, guys. Those are 3 of their cross-division games going into this coming season. So they also have a game with Michigan, but they look like they came out pretty well. And a couple of quirks to Purdue's schedule, I'm sure you guys probably noticed. For the second year in a row, Nebraska will come to West Lafayette. And for the second year in a row, Purdue has to go to Wisconsin. So, again, I'm not sure what precipitated that. But, again, Purdue, of course, is supposed to go to Nebraska to open this year, and Wisconsin is supposed to come to West Lafayette. So couple of twists and turns in that Purdue schedule, guys. And one thing worth noting, I think Purdue's first two opponents, Michigan and Iowa, will both be breaking in new quarterbacks.
Right.
They could have a couple hiccups trying to get that new signal caller worked in.
Yeah, again, I think it's going to be a blanker slate or a more even playing field, or at least certainly an unknown one. It makes you wonder how Vegas will look at any of this when the time gets there too, because how the heck do you do that if you don't know what that's going to entail? Kevin Warren talked today on Big Ten Network. I thought it was interesting. He talked about testing, and that is still going to be a huge part of this, of whether this season will go on and be able to go on. He talked about a Monday test and maybe a Friday test, the importance of being able to identify who is positive going into those games. To me, if you can do that on Friday and quarantine guys Friday night, you should be good to go for games. But it's an interesting medical part of this, Brian. As you look at this, there's just tons of things that you have to consider to try to make this season get to its 10 games.
If you're going to test on Friday, you better get that result back right away, right?
Right, and that's the assumption that's going to happen, that they are going to be able to have.
If you test on Friday and then you're going somewhere, if you get on a bus to go somewhere, and the guy finds out while he's on the bus that he's tested positive,
I think the plan is, and I think there's still some work to be done. In fact, some of it's being done at Purdue's campus with some of its testing, is they are going to have relatively testing that will be done and available within hours or within minutes. Now, again, we only got a first game here in 4 weeks, so I am not Dr. Anthony Fauci, so by any stretch, but it is going to be interesting. I just think that part of it is going to be a big storyline of being able to really walk into this. And I thought, Kevin Warren, it was important that he said, and I thought it gave him some credibility. He has a son that's at Mississippi State. He's sitting there saying, hey, we know this is still fraught with peril, but at least the way that it's being done now, I am confident having my own child comfortable in relative terms. And he made that clear, relative terms, that he's comfortable with this whole setup. That I think is important of giving you the opportunity to get these games in. Tom, what do you say on that?
Yeah, like we talked about earlier too, it was a tough task, and the fact that Kevin, like you said, Alan, has a son walking through this, so the commissioner is a parent and has a vested interest and understands the needs of these student athletes. And time and again, we've really seen an explosion here of making the health and welfare of student athletes become more of a top priority. We're seeing legislation gets pushed through here on the name, image, and likeness. We're seeing the Big Ten Unity Council, the Pac-12 Unity Council, these organizations with students banding together for better protection, primarily for their health, because there's still a lot of uncertainty even among some of these young people to wade into this situation. So we'll see. We talked earlier about players opting out already. We've seen the cornerback at Virginia Tech, Caleb Farley, opt out. And then the running back at Illinois, Rayvon Bonner's he's opting out too. We saw a Michigan State defensive lineman opt out today as well. So on it goes. There's talk about Micah Parsons, the star linebacker for Penn State, opting out. So we still may see some more prominent players, not just in the Big Ten, but nationally, decide they don't want to take this risk and not play this season. So it's going to be fascinating to see how things unfold, guys. And I'm really eager to see what we're talking about 1 month from now. It's going to be fascinating to see once all these kids are back to campus, practices are going. And I'm really eager again to see the landscape of these college campuses, 30 days from now and what's going on.
Yeah, I'll be honest. It was good to see Jeff Brom. It was good to actually talk. I mean, there was a lot of COVID talk, certainly, but talk about actual games and talk about his players. He obviously gave a thumbs up, which you would expect him to David Bell and to George Karlaftis, and calling Rondale Moore 1,000% ready, I believe he said. And yet Rondale Moore, we don't, we anticipate based on what Jeff Brom says that he's not going to be one that's going to opt out, but he is one guy that's has things to think about, Brian, as you go into this deal. You always can wonder, a guy with that talent level that would be eligible for the draft after this year. That's going to be in guys' thought process as they continue to navigate their way through this 2020 season.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily just Rondale Moore, but every player in that position has to decide: am I best served, playing a season in which there's a risk I'm going to get this, or I'm going to pick up some nagging injuries because of kind of the nature of the off season, or am I better off laying out, training, really dedicating myself, and then putting everything I have into working out for scouts here in a couple months? That's a question that has to be decided upon by every one of those players and every one of those players' families. But it is a serious question. What's to say this season doesn't start off and then after 4 weeks gets called? I mean, everything is uncharted waters here, and all of these guys have a lot at stake, and they all have to decide how they're best served in terms of getting to where they want to go. And there are some of these guys, Rondale Moore being one of them, who are in a really good place in terms of their ability to, get a pretty good opportunity right out of college. And you don't want to hurt yourself in situations like this. I know a lot of people say Rondale Moore's got to play to show people he's healthy. No, he doesn't. He has to show them he's healthy back when it matters, when he's working out for NFL scouts. I don't think that's a consideration. Lorenzo Neal, I think, has to play in games maybe to show people that he still can be he's the same level of productive football player he was before. But I think Rondale Moore will be just fine. He will go to NFL scouts in a couple months. He'll run a 4.2 something or whatever it is, and they'll be perfectly fine with what they see. But all of these guys have to calculate the risk the best they can when there's so much unknown going into this, and decide what's best for them and their interests. Obviously, it is their careers. I don't think they owe anything to anyone but themselves and their families in cases like this. And it's something they have to put a lot of thought into.
Yeah, no question. That's going to be a storyline among many this year. Tom, your takeaways. Jeff Brom spent 55 minutes with us, with you and Mike Carmen, et cetera, and we got peppered with questions, and was good with his time today, certainly. But that's going to be our format, I think, this year. We're already, as we've been for the last several months, been Zoom heroes, so to speak. I would imagine that's going to be the format when we're talking to Jeff Brom after practice. But what were your takeaways from what the coach had to say this afternoon at 3:00 when he addressed the media?
I always knew the program under Jeff Brom was always very player friendly. And that was really underscored again today. We talked about the opt-out discussion. Jeff mentioned today they've had extensive conversations with multiple players and their parents. Bottom line is they're always going to do what's best for the kid. And I really believe that. I really think this is a very player-friendly program. And again, Jeff really reiterated that today in talking to us when we brought up the notion of opting out. And he also discussed the extensive health and safety measures the university's gone through just from an athletic department standpoint. No surprise there, but Purdue usually doesn't cut corners on stuff. That's been my experience my entire life. Very thorough organization, and Jeff talked about, again, a lot of the safety measures, the spacing, social distancing, how they've worked out. Guys, it was even mentioned today, somebody asked the coach if how much he always loves to do 11-on-11 scrimmages and work during practices, if he was going to do as much of that this fall or this August, I should say. And Jeff said no. They're not going to have as much 11-on-11 drilling as they typically do in the past. I think as a safety measure. So again, these coaches have a big challenge ahead of them, trying to practice football, trying to prepare for games in a violent sport that involves a lot of people, and yet hoping nobody gets ill or transmits this virus. So again, my hats off to those guys and everybody at Purdue who's put in yeoman's work. I'm sure spent a lot of money and time trying to figure this out. And for everybody's sake, I hope we can all pull it off.
I wanted to ask, and I did ask Jeff on the last question about leadership and the role of that, and the importance of that. And I didn't ask the question as well as I should have because I didn't get the answer that I was kind of hoping to get. But Brian, is there going to be a premium in coaching this year? There always is, but is there more of a premium? Because you're going to have to be nimble. You're going to have to be extremely organized. You're going to have, as Jeff Brom said today, going to have everybody ready to play. Is there more of a premium on really good coaching is going to could deliver teams to victories this year, maybe even more than ever? Do you buy that theory?
Yeah, probably. But I also think that the results are going to be randomized, more than ever for a lot of what I talked about before. And I also think during the week, so much is going to go into just the logistics of preparing a football team. I'd love to, when all this is over with this season, I'd love to find out like what all went into this. Like, if you're preparing for a game, can you have all four of your quarterbacks in the same room, during the week? Or did you have to have two separate rooms so that if one quarterback gets sick, all four of them don't get sick? Do you have 1 and 4 in one group and 2 and 3 in the other group? Think about the offensive line. Can you have all those guys in the same meeting room? How do you socially distance football? I don't get the antithesis of social distancing. I would just love to know the extent to which these programs will have to be inconvenienced simply to have a week of preparation. And as I've said many times before, I just think this year the results matter less than they ever will ever, because I think there's victory in just playing the games. So much is going to go into just playing the games and things are going to be so randomized by all of the circumstances at play that, I don't know how you judge this season. If the team you root for only wins 6 games and you were hoping for 10, or they only win 2 when you were hoping for 6, it'll be interesting to see how fans kind of process that when you understand what all is going into just having a season.
Yeah, and I that's the way I look at it. I almost look at it as, you can start to chart out, all right, here are the games Purdue can win, and all right, do you see 5 wins for Purdue? I don't know. But I would look at this as a huge success, and really a huge success in so many different ways if you can play this and keep it safe. And almost from a national standpoint, it would be a huge victory, I think, for everyone if you find a way to get this done. And because we may be dealing with this disease, we hope not much past the first quarter or second quarter of 2021, but we don't know that. And I just think that's I would agree with you. I think that there's going to be a lot more, maybe more sportsmanship. I don't know if that's the right term, but certainly a feeling of cheering the other guy on just to be able to participate.
But
I think that's going to be a big part. Go ahead, Brian.
But no handshakes.
But no handshakes.
I've actually covered some AAU games this spring, some basketball games, and the teams, when the game is over, they come to their benches and they wave to one another. It's really funny. But yeah, I would agree with you. If never more so have all of these players been in this together than they are this year, I would think this would be a year where everybody's kind of rooting for one another here, as much as adversaries can or opponents can.
You know what? You know what victory's going to be this year, guys? Just playing 10 games.
Yeah.
It's a series of exhibitions, is what it is.
I agree with that.
It's almost more exhibitions than it is a season.
Yeah, really.
Because who knows? Is this even going to end in a Big Ten title game? Is this going to end in a bowl season? Was that even addressed today? Did anybody ask any of that? I mean,
well, the Big Ten championship is scheduled for December the 5th, but I don't see. I don't know how. I mean, how do you get a national how do you get – maybe you could have the playoff and have 4 teams, but you're going to have to do it based on league only. It's just going to be – that would not surprise me at all if you shake hands on December the 19th or December the 5th or whenever this all ends and say that was a heck of an effort. We're darn glad we got 10 games in, and let's deal with the winner. I think you'd call that a raging, roaring success if you get to that point. And if you get to a national championship, I think you're way ahead of the curve. But
what I would do,
we'll see.
I would just boot every if it gets down to it, just have the committee pick 2 teams to play for the title. That's your only postseason game. That's the only thing you did. Just have the committee pick 2 teams to play for the championship. It's a weird year. Let them pick 2 teams to play. There's no playoff. There's no other bowls. Just see if you can crown a champ by having the committee pick the 2 teams to meet for it.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see the thing to watch. And the good thing for us is there's some things to write about and talk about, and a lot of things to have levels of conjecture on. That's for certain. So, parting shots, Brian or Tom. Anything else you want to add to the fray before we sign off for tonight?
I said something before about the non-traditional training camp maybe not mattering as much because it's everybody's problem. I do think it is some people's problem more than it is others. And I think, Purdue putting in a new defense and not having a full spring practice and having less time on the practice field in the off season and having a situation at quarterback where I assume you're still kind of looking for your guy there. You're breaking in a new guy in Austin Burton. He's, whether or not he can credibly compete for the job 2 weeks after showing up on campus, I don't know. But I do think there are some factors there for Purdue in terms of the offseason that maybe put them at a little bit of a disadvantage. But again, it is everybody's problem. It is just some people's problem more than it is others, I think.
Yeah, at least you're not, Michigan State with a brand new coach trying to get everything sorted out. You had no spring football practices. So Mel Tucker's really up against it in East Lansing. Real quick, guys, Coach Brom brought up 4 areas I think we should all keep an eye on during camp. Special teams being one of them, of course. Purdue's on its 4th special teams coach in 4 years. We all know, Jeff Brom knows they need more from the special teams. They have spent extensive time trying to get better with the run game. They know they have to run the football better to take pressure off their quarterbacks and just the whole aerial passing attack overall. The offensive line is a 3rd area to watch. Coach Brom mentioned that. He thinks they have more offensive linemen ready to play this year than he's had during his previous 3 seasons on campus. And lastly, what Brian talked about, the defense, that was the 4th point of emphasis Jeff Brom made today as well. We know there's a new coordinator, Bob Diaco, a new scheme. Again, Brian mentioned there are only 8 spring practices, so there's probably still a learning curve there. So those are 4 areas I think fans need to continue to monitor moving through August and into the early part of the year.
Those are 4 pretty big areas.
Yeah, they are. That covers it. But that's the storyline too, I think.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. And I always enjoy talking to you guys, whether we're talking business or talking games or both. And we'll look forward to our Sunday conversation when we get around to the weekend as well. All right. I want to thank our sponsor, the Purdue Union Club Hotel and the Purdue Memorial Union. That great tradition, great facility on campus is open. And the 811 restaurant, obviously, will be serving. There's going to be some real neat nuances to this new facility, in addition to renovated rooms, and we'll be talking about that. We thank them for sponsoring this simulcast, I guess you'd call it, and we're glad to have them on board as a sponsor. So have a great rest of your night. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll look forward to this story as it continues to unfold, the 2020 season of Purdue football and college football as it is. We're not out of the woods yet of whether we're going to have that first game, but I think today was a step in the right direction. We now have a schedule. We now can begin to start a practice. So have a great evening, everybody, and thanks so much for watching.